John D. Rockefeller was widely regarded as the modern world's first billionaire, amassing $1 billion in the early 20th century, which is roughly $400 billion in today's terms. Due to his status, some even considered him chosen by God himself to make money. He believed it too, the chosen one entrusted with wealth to share among others and do good. Newspapers printed his face, and people admired him for his focus, leadership, and devotion to God. His wealth seemed to have connected him to divinity and moral hubris. This admiration and worship was not an isolated incident. It has happened to many people throughout history. In 1863, after Beethoven died, his body was dug up for examination, and part of his skull was taken by an Austrian doctor, then passed down for generations among admirers and private collectors. Napoleon's belongings were also treasured, studied, and even stolen for their perceived value and greatness. In more recent times, celebrities' homes have been broken into, their clothes stolen, and fans have even drunk from the glasses they used. These stories of admiration and thirst for the statistically rare show how deeply obsessed we are with them. We crave a select group of people with beauty, wealth, power, fame, intelligence, and talent. People who are seen as beneficial to society and who possess enormous influence and authority. They are the dominant minority, the elites. Cambridge Dictionary defines them as the richest, most powerful, best educated, or best trained group in a society. We think that they earn what they have, and rightly so, for people who work hard to get where they are. But some of those people are simply lucky, and sometimes all it takes to be an elite is to be born in the right family. Because of that, some wield power they never worked for, owing their existence entirely to luck. Yet, they live a life of luxury. They don't have to worry about food, shelter, or healthcare. They have access to the best education and professional services. They have the freedom to explore the world and pursue their passions, take big risks, and, in a way, rule the world. On top of all that, they are adored, and we're not. So, to gain that adoration, we try to imitate them. We try to look rich and cool, living a life we can't afford and trying to appear bigger than we really are. But to be statistically rare and ideal is impossibly hard, and in that pursuit, we create a hostile environment for the norm. We set a standard that most people can't reach. We criticize people for not meeting beauty standards, shame men for not being tall enough, make fun of those who struggle, and look down on anyone who doesn't have enough money. We even beat ourselves up for not having it. That's exactly why the world seems to be catered to the minority. And no matter how much we try, we just can't fight the rule of statistics. After all, we are the majority, the normal ones. But wait, why are we so into them? We think about them so much that we forget that the world isn't filled with them. Being a minority means being statistically irrelevant. These people don't define the collective experience or the shared consciousness of humanity. It's us. If we were to gather every human story on Earth, the largest number of people would likely share experiences closer to ours. The world should belong to people like us, to the teachers shaping young minds, the construction workers building our cities, the office clerks keeping things running, and quiet souls behind the counter at McDonald's. Even if we look at how the minority came to be, much of it comes down to luck. If we were to reset everything, would they still turn out the same? If an intelligent person suddenly lost their ability to think, or someone beautiful was disfigured in an accident, could they ever get it back? Probably not. We literally are the world, the ones the minority could never exist without. We created the world, made them rich, and we work for them, the aggregate of their success. To them, maybe we're just an afterthought, someone they remember only when they need something from us. We enter their minds only when they design new products, music, or movies. But if we're always thinking about them, who will think about us? Who will ensure our happiness? The answer is us. Yet, just as the dominant minority forgets about us, we too forget the minority on the other side. The minority we often admire can be statistically visualized through a bell curve, with the desired minority sitting at one end of it. But there are two ends of the bell, and the other side is often overlooked. These are the neglected minority, the invisible lives at the edge of the human bell curve. People whose lives are so different from ours that we find them almost unlivable. They are arguably the ones who need our help and attention the most, yet they remain invisible to us. These are the people living with diseases, the disabled, the elderly, the extremely poor, victims of war, low-status workers, stateless people, and many more. But they aren't as invisible as we think. They make appearances in the news, often as statistics or distant tragedies, packaged as stories to be consumed before fading away with the next headline. Yet, they never stay long in our minds. We see them as unfortunate, offer a bit of sympathy, and move on. That's assuming people even have sympathy. Sometimes, some respond with disgust, blaming them for things they mostly have no control over, refusing to see them as real people. Maybe our refusal to see them as normal people comes from not wanting to associate ourselves with them, ignoring the fact that the same thing could happen to us one day. But the cruel truth about statistics is that someone always ends up on the wrong side of the curve, and one day that someone could be you. It's easy to accept that we don't think much about the neglected minority, justified by how small they seem in scale compared to us. But that very logic assumes that something vast should be impossible to ignore. And yet, there exists a majority so immense, so overwhelmingly present, that it feels unreal how they go unnoticed every day, even as they endure unimaginable suffering. What's even stranger is that we see them constantly, not as living beings, but as fragments of their former selves. They are the chickens we eat, the steak we devour, the flesh that fills our plates and our stomachs, and yet we never think of the life that once inhabited that form. Imagine being born into existence completely at the mercy of another creature's desire, forced to live in dark, crowded, and stinking spaces. Every choice you make leads down the same predictable path. Your life expectancy decided before you even take your first breath. The life expectancy of a natural cattle is around 20 years, but the life of those beef cattle is only 1.5 to 2 years. The same cruel design repeats in pigs, chickens, sheep, rabbits, and geese. Each life compressed, confined, and spent for our consumption. The relatively short lifespan may be used to legitimize their suffering, but the sheer number of their existence completely disregards that excuse. If we look at the biomass of all mammals on Earth, livestock accounts for 62%, humans only 34%, and the remaining 4% are wild mammals. Each day, 900,000 cows are slaughtered, 1.4 million goats, 1.7 million sheep, 3.8 million pigs, and 202 million chickens. Even while alive, many people aren't aware of the standard practices these factories carry out. Worldwide, 74% of all livestock are raised in confined spaces, severely limiting their movement. Pregnant pigs, for example, are kept in crates so small they cannot turn around. These cramped spaces breed aggression among the animals, sometimes even leading to cannibalism. So, to avoid this, they perform mutilations on the animals, often without anesthesia. The beaks of chickens are trimmed, and the teeth and tails of piglets are clipped. Some pigs are even castrated to prevent bad smells in the meat. Because of the trauma it causes, routine tail clipping is banned in Europe, but the rule is mostly ignored. Farmed animals are also genetically selected to increase productivity, but this can lead to serious health problems. Chickens, for example, are bred to grow unnaturally large, struggling to walk under their own weight, which causes heart and lung issues. In some places, these animals are slaughtered in gas chambers. Not only are the lives of these livestock miserable, but they're also catastrophic for the environment and public health. They produce massive greenhouse gas emissions and are the source of deadly diseases. The swine flu and the bird flu both originated from livestock farming. These animals, dependent on human intervention, have been altered so radically that they are no longer suited to survive in the natural world. These farms consume 20 to 30% of all fresh water on Earth and occupy 1/3 of all ice-free land just to produce food for livestock. On top of that, livestock production drives extinction, desertification, and habitat destruction, with meat considered one of the leading causes of the 6th mass extinction. It is transparent why intensive farming is described as one of the worst moral catastrophes in human history. The suffering of billions reduced to the meat we place on our plates. So, who's responsible for creating the world we live in now? Well, it's complicated. In a way, we, the majority, are the ones who create the world because society just happens to favor status and rarity, and we keep spreading that value, even when it's hurting us. We wouldn't feel bad if there were no one around to make us feel bad. But if the world is the product of our own creation, then that means we hold the power to reshape it. But it's also not entirely our fault either. Behind the stage of everyday life, there are invisible forces pulling the strings and making decisions on our behalf, using their influence to shape the world to their needs, exploiting the vulnerable desires that society craves. It's true that we have the options and choices to shape our lives, and I believe many people watching this are living in a democracy. But having the power to choose also means that we have a responsibility to be informed enough to make educated decisions. We simply can't make decisions based on outdated and harmful information. But many of us are indoctrinated into thinking that the world is working the way it should, even though it's largely unnatural. And indoctrination is hard to escape, especially when you grow up with it. Yet, we desperately need a better world, a world that encourages critical thinking, compassion, and rationality. Our beliefs, taste, and values shouldn't appeal to the majority, and something is not right just because everyone thinks so. However, those desires for the rare are not wrong because some of it is inherent, wired into our biology. So don't blame yourself for wanting something natural. But we need to ask whether that longing is truly inherent or merely expected, and whether it causes more harm than good. Now, knowing that the world is shaped by us, let's turn our eyes back to the minority we worship and see if they're truly the villains we imagine. Recurrently, elites are often painted as greedy, opportunistic, and evil. And while there is some truth to that, it's far from the full picture. Elites, in one way or another, are a natural part of human society. Historically, some elites have committed unspeakable horrors, from the Holocaust to the Cambodian genocide to the Srebrenica massacre. Yet, it's also true that many of the world's greatest achievements have come from a relatively small group of people with specialized skills. The Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the Scientific Revolution, the American Revolution all brought new ways of seeing, thinking, and being into the world, thanks to the contributions of a concentrated few. So, with a gift so rare among people and influence so enormous, shouldn't it be put to use for the benefit of the many? Elites can take many forms, and I'm not talking about the wealthy, politicians, or aristocrats. I'm talking about those who are best educated and trained, who possess skills that most of us do not. The ones who contribute directly to society and are not necessarily exploitative. So, the right way forward is to choose the good ones. However, history warns us to tread carefully, as past attempts to overthrow elites often show that they're never truly eliminated, only replaced, and usually by something worse. The French Revolution removed the monarchy and aristocracy, but it led to the rise of Napoleon. The Russian Revolution overthrew the Tsarist elites, but the Bolsheviks created a new ruling class that was even more repressive. The fact that many political upheavals are driven by emotion rather than reason makes it even worse, as people blinded by anger often end up empowering those they once despised. So, with more deliberation, we can find elites who are genuinely good at what they do, those who can manage budgets, enforce laws, lead armies, run schools, and use their decades of experience to navigate the complex modern world better than most of us could. Because, to be very frank, there are many among the majority who are simply incompetent, and for that, we should be thankful that some elites exist. The admiration for the elites will always exist as long as we crave status and rarity, but we must recognize that our applause for the ideally rare isn't harmless. It hurts the normal people who happen to be at the mercy of statistics, and it can even hurt ourselves. It makes us forget about those who truly need our help, where a simple act could mean life or death. Maybe it's time to recalibrate where we channel our attention and focus on raising the median level of happiness and quality of life. The power of the collective should never be underestimated, for the world has always been shaped by the many, even if it often speaks in the voice of the few. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. I got the idea for this video when I walked past someone with a limp. I see her almost every morning on my way to work, and I just felt a little sad. It reminded me of Mileva Maric, who also had a limp and was made fun of as a child. I couldn't help but wonder if the girl I saw went through something similar growing up. Anyway, if you like what I do, consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll be putting some bonus content there as a form of appreciation. And your support would really help me keep doing this and hopefully make it a living fantasy one day. So yeah, thanks and have a good week.